Hey everybody, we hope you're doing well. We miss you all, and we continue to look at what happens or what are some of the changes that should happen in our lives after we choose to follow Jesus, after we've gone through this process of turning away from our own ways and going after God's ways, after we've been made into new creations, after we've been restored, after we have a new purpose in life. And one of the things that should begin to happen is the issue or idea of peace, both peace in our hearts and peace as we look at the world, as well as us being vessels or instruments of God's peace. It's interesting in these times, all that's going around our nation. Globally, we're still facing the coronavirus pandemic, but locally, especially sparked by George Floyd's death, we're seeing the racial tensions in the U.S. Boil to a breaking point. There's a great need for peace because we don't have it right now, and sometimes we don't know how to find it as well. And so much of what we desperately need is found in Jesus. And the closer we get to Jesus and the more we become like Jesus, the more these qualities should become our own qualities and should be the way that we even look at the world around us. And one of those qualities that should begin to take over our hearts, our thoughts, even the way that we feel about ourselves is peace. Sometimes the wars rage within us, within our hearts, within our emotions, within our minds. And Jesus brings peace. Sometimes the war wages outside of us. And in those situations, Jesus would bring peace. Now, Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 14, a verse about this. Let me read it for you. Talking about Jesus, Paul says, "For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility. He is our peace." Now, what's ironic about this verse, especially for us in America during this time, is it is written in the context of two ethnic groups who seem to always be having problems, always having tension, even battling one another. The Bible uses the terminology Jews and Gentiles. Those of the Jewish nation and those who were outside of that nation and not Jewish. Now, obviously, not everybody was at war. Not everybody had conflict. Not everybody had tension. People got along well, but there was enough history between the two groups that there was an underlying tension that always would boil up at certain points. Now, Paul uses the example of the tensions between these two ethnic groups to help show that we as humans are not at peace with God until we have chosen to follow Jesus, that he becomes our peace. He breaks down the barrier wall. It was an image used back in the temple times where certain ethnic groups could go further in to the temple and other groups had to be left out of the temple. There was literally a barrier wall, right? And there's segregation back then, just like there's been segregation in our history and our culture. A literal wall or barrier that divided the front group from the back group. And Paul says Jesus becomes our peace. He has broken down that barrier wall. That the closer we become more like Jesus and come to Jesus, the more peace should fill our hearts. That in the same way there are racial tensions, there is a gap or a divide between humans and human nature and God and godly nature. And that we need to come to God to have true peace. And the way we do that is through Jesus, because he himself is our peace. He has broken down the barrier wall between us and God, and he's made a way for us to be united with God. If we really need to know the answer to true peace, it's in Jesus. And it's in viewing the world like Jesus did, and it's in viewing other people like Jesus did. That's why the call to follow Jesus truly means to become more like Jesus, because he himself is our peace, so that when we go out into the world, we become a tangible presence of the peace of God to those around us. Our hope and our prayers for peace, and also opportunities to be peacemakers in times of great tension and great conflict. And that is our prayer and our hope for you, that one of the changes that you will truly experience is the peace of God within your own heart and your own life, so that where you go, you will bring the peace of God with you. God bless.